More and more donors and pundits in the establishment class are admitting, some of them through clenched teeth, that Donald J. Trump is, in their words, quote, inevitable. He is going to win the GOP primary hands down in a total and complete wipeout in every single state, most especially in Ron DeSantis' own state of Florida. Now, right now, Donald Trump has raised $45.5 million in donations just from the third quarter alone in 2023. He holds $36 million in cash for the GOP primary election, or what's left of it. And he's leading in all of the polls by double digits in every single primary state. And the endorsements continue to just rack up for number 45. Senator Rick Scott, you may have seen this. Senator Rick Scott of Florida, yes, Florida, in a devastating dismissal of his own governor, has officially endorsed President Trump. He's officially endorsed Trump, and that's huge because it's not only repudiation, as it were, of DeSantis, suggesting that the Republican establishment has more or less completely lost any confidence whatsoever in DeSantis' candidacy. But more than that, Scott, as I understand it, generally doesn't endorse. He tries to keep above the fray, as it were, and stay out of the endorsing game, but not this time. He broke his characteristic silence and has come out 100% pro-Trump on the MAGA Express. So that was a huge endorsement yesterday. Trump, of course, continues to surge in the polls. According to the 538 polling average, he has a near 50-point lead over the pack. Again, this is a dominance, a primary dominance we've simply never seen before. The latest American Pulse poll has Trump up over Biden by 2, 44 to 42. The latest Harris X poll also has him up by 2, 51 to 49. And the latest YouGov poll has them both tied at 42 apiece. Again, the way to understand these polls is that Trump never, not at any point, never did Trump ever lead, or was he ever tied with either Clinton or Biden in 2016 and 2020 in any of these polls. Right now, as we speak, these polls show that Trump is in the strongest position he has ever been in. And keep in mind, he not only won 2016 with more than 300 electoral votes, more than any of the Republican 30 years, but then he in turn got more votes than any incumbent in history in 2020, because of course that was such a pristine election, as we now know from Bridgeport, Connecticut. And he's now in a stronger position than ever, than either of those two monumental elections. Now, for some odd reason, a number of donors who, as Rich Barris of the People's Pundit never tires of reminding us, are horrific political forecasters, right? The members of the Republican donor class are basically politically illiterate. They're political idiots. And they actually believed that they could sever MAGA voters, America First deplorables, away from Trump by giving them a supposed viable alternative, namely Ron DeSantis. Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, you might recall early on in the get-go here, they played along with that big time. And the assumption here was twofold. One, they believed that the indictments, as they piled up, as you just heard, convictions coming in, they believe would inevitably hurt Trump in the polls. All of this weaponized legalism would inevitably damage Trump's political viability. That was the first, assumption or prediction. The second was that Trump's base is the same as the Republican base. Trump's base is the same as the Republican Party's base. In other words, you could simply replace Trump with a viable Republican alternative in every region that Trump performs well in, every voter demographic that Trump performs well in, that will translate automatically to the Republican alternative performing just as well. So If Trump is winning Ohio by 10 points over Biden, well, then DeSantis will win Ohio by 10 points. Some, like if you listen to National Review, they'll think he'll win by 12 points or 15 points. If Trump is winning the Rust Belt, then an alternative Republican like DeSantis will win the Rust Belt as well, right? These are the twofold assumptions. As it turns out, both of these assumptions are dead wrong.
But first, how many UFC fans do we have out there? We know that the one and only Donald Trump is a huge UFC fan, as are the fighters of him. But have you ever wondered what they do to manage their pain? Well, you don't have to, because a fellow patriot and good friend to this channel is precisely the one who provides relief to that pain, and he's here to do the same for you. You know, gang, as we age, aches and pains we think of are normal, but they don't have to be. And that's where the groundbreaking medical scientist Clint Winters comes in. You've seen Clint on Fox. You've seen him on this channel. He's a world-renowned health expert who's unveiled a natural pain reliever that's taking the world by storm. It's called ConoCB2. It's the 100% drug-free way to get full-body pain relief without dangerous meds, and it's the official pain reliever for the fighters in the UFC. And the best news, ConoCB2 has no documented side effects after years of private testing. It's absolutely the future of relief. So whatever you do, make sure to click on that link below and check out Clint's amazingly informative report on how ConoCB2 is changing lives by providing safe and powerful relief at a fraction of the cost of pain pills. Click on that link below right now.
We now know that with every indictment, with every mugshot, every kangaroo court, the more popular Trump gets. With every indictment, with every mugshot, with every kangaroo court, the more popular Trump gets. They're having the absolute opposite effect. They're having the opposite effect that these donor class idiots, along with the Democrats, notice they're teaming up here to take Trump out. They're having the absolute opposite effect that both donors and Democrats predicted. The more they persecute, the more popular Trump gets. The more they persecute, the more popular he gets. And again, we have the data that's suggested for why that's the case. Trafalgar polling found relatively recently that 79% of Americans, 8 in 10, believe that we live in a two-tier justice system that protects the establishment at the expense of average citizens. Comparably, the most recent Harvard-Harris poll found that 55% of the population believes that the federal indictment against President Trump is politically motivated. 56% believe that it's deliberate interference in the 2024 election by Biden's Justice Department. And so, to these donors and Democrats' horror, a supermajority of voters appears to be emerging that's ready to push back against this weaponized legalism and restore the rule of law. Ultimately, this may be why Trump is so obviously crushing it here. More and more voters are galvanizing around Trump because they see him as the object of this weaponized system that they previously recognized exists before it was so overtly weaponized against him. And it's not just traditional Republicans that are doing this. This is so key to the second assumption that was so wrong. It's not just traditional Republicans. The Washington Post, we've talked about this before, they came out and admitted very recently that Trump is seeing levels of minority support no Republican has reached in half a century. And they found this across 5 high-quality polls where in a single month, where Trump was averaging an astonishing 20% support among Black voters and an unprecedented 42% support among Latino voters. So again, make sure you get what they did there. The methodology is so fascinating. They're cross-referencing a number of different polls taken over a 30-day period from different outlets, right? Different polling agencies using different methods, different weighting systems and the like. And yet, when you average all these 5 polls together, Trump comes out with a minority voter support Republicans haven't seen in half a century. That doesn't translate. That doesn't just throw in another Republican there. And so it doesn't translate, obviously. And it's largely due to the backlash against the very weaponized legalism that you just saw DeSantis participating in. That mugshot, that freaking awesome, glorious, magnificent mugshot is the GOAT, man. It's the greatest of all time because it made Trump officially gangsta, right? We've talked about this. He's now one of us. Voters who have consistently voted Democrat are now voting Trump based almost solely on that image because it made him one of them. And it's funny, I owe this observation to Robert Barnes. I think it's brilliant. If you ask people, particularly working class, non-white working class voters, how many New York billionaires do you know? How many former presidents do you know? Well, of course, the answer is 0. How many do we know, right? But if you ask them, how many people do you know who've been victims of the system? How many people do you know have had mug shots taken, but who were innocent, right? Well, that's different. They may know several at some point in their lives who got arrested, oftentimes unfairly. So in other words, that mugshot transferred Trump from one cultural sphere, one cultural space, the New York billionaire former president, into another cultural space, someone legally persecuted by an unfair and unjust system. And that transference, that cultural transference, has endeared Trump to voters who would never perhaps even considered voting for him prior to it. So this weaponized legalism and all the indictments and court appearances and mugshots and potential convictions has, contrary to what the donors and Democrats predicted, they've completely resulted in more and more people rallying around Trump rather than rejecting him. This is what DeSantis doesn't get, right? People are rallying around Trump as a result of this weaponized lawfare rather than rejecting him.